Hello and welcome to the Oak and Lamb YouTube channel. My name is Becca Oaks and I am an owner and craft educator here with Oak and Lamb. Today, I want to teach you how to make a frame. There are so many different kinds of frames that you can make, but the one that we're going to be doing today is a mitered right angle frame. The reason that you would want to be able to create your own frames is that if you are trying to create projects to resell, then frames can be pretty costly if you are purchasing them from stores and then repurposing them for your use. If you can build and create your own frames, it cuts down on that expense and your profit will be even higher. It is super simple to create your own frames. And since you do know how to make them, it opens up all sorts of possibilities for different frame sizes that you might not be able to find in store. So this is very exciting, it's very useful, and it's pretty quick and simple to put together. Now for supplies, what you're going to need for this particular type of frame is a miter saw. Now there are different size miter saws. This is a 7 1/4 sliding miter saw, and they go all the way up to 12 inches as well. However, since we're just doing some smaller frames like this, the 7 1/4 inch gives us ample cut space. If you're going to be doing larger frames and needing to cut the backing for larger frames with your miter saw, if you don't have a circular saw or table saw to do that, then you would want to get a larger miter saw, maybe the 12-inch sliding. But if you have a small space like we do here in the studio, this size is really great. This is the Ryobi, and there are so many different brands, but this one came in under $200, so it's pretty affordable as well. Next, you're going to need an air gun. This is also a Ryobi product, and it is the Airstrike nail gun, and you can put several different size nails in it. This particular one is an 18 gauge, or it holds 18 gauge nails, and so you need to make sure that you're buying the proper nails for your particular air gun. You can look it up if you happen to forget what size it takes. You can look it up online by your product number. But we are going to be using 3/4 inch nails and 1.5 inch nails today. And you may have noticed that I call this an air gun. That's just because that's what I'm used to calling them. When I was growing up, my dad had a nail gun that was run by an air compressor. And while this uses the Airstrike technology, it actually just uses a battery and no air. So it's very convenient. It's very portable. These are rechargeable batteries. I recommend getting a couple of them because there's nothing worse than being in the middle of a project and your battery dying and not having another charged battery. So grab a couple of those so that you can keep at least one charged at all times. I'm also using a tape measure today so that I can measure what I am going to be cutting before I cut it. And then I have a 1x2 piece of lumber. Now this is pine. It doesn't necessarily matter what type of wood you use for this. However, I like this piece of pine because it's not super knotty and it's not bowed. This is a really nice piece. It was around $5. You can get them cheaper than that if you get longer lengths, but I just didn't want to deal with the 8-foot lengths or the 10-foot lengths or something like that here in the studio. If you have a space like a workshop, a wood workshop or something like that, then I recommend getting the longer lengths because it is less expensive to do that. I'm also going to be using this for my backing. This is MDF or draft board, and I can easily paint this. I can easily put this into the back of my frame, and I'll show you when we assemble it how I'm going to do that. There's nothing special, no special grooves or anything like that that we have to cut or make work in order to get this on there. So that's very easy, very simple. You can also use plywood for your backing if you want to, but I just had this piece of MDF board laying around. It was a scrap left over from a Glowforge project, and I thought, hey, that will work perfectly for this project. The last supply that we're going to be using today is clamps. These are little DeWalt clamps that we use a lot here in the studio. You can use them for a lot of different things, but we use them mostly for woodworking. And these will help us keep two pieces of our frame together while we're nailing into it. So very useful. You could get this done without the clamps. However, I like not having to worry about those pieces moving around when I'm trying to nail into them. So grab some little clamps as well. So today I am going to show you how to make an 8x8 frame, and then I'm going to show you where you need to measure on your lumber in order to get this 8x8 finished frame. And what I mean by 8x8 is the outer parts will be 8x8. The inner part will not be 8x8. So the outer part of the frame will measure 8x8 inches when we're finished. Okay, so I'm grabbing this 1x2 piece of lumber here. And just so you know, a 1x2 is not actually 1 inch by 2 inches. It is 3/4 of an inch by 1.5 inches. When I first started working with lumber, that really messed with my head. 2x4s are not 2x4s, etc., etc. So remember that when you are doing your dimensions and you're figuring. So I'm looking at this piece of lumber, and what I want is this piece right here, because this is going to be my outer piece. I'm going to go ahead and designate it as that. This will be my inner piece. And we're making 45-degree angle cuts here. Each piece of wood will have an angle cut in like this and in like this. So we'll have 4 pieces that are cut exactly like this. So what I want to do is grab my measuring tape, and I'm going to mark 8 inches right here. So from here to here is 8 inches. Now, I'll show you in just a minute. On my miter saw, I'll make my first cut from this corner that will be 45 degrees in like this. I'll make my second cut at 45 degrees this way. So now I'm going to set up the miter saw, and you can see what we're doing. You can see there's a knob right here and a lever right here, and what you're going to do is unscrew this so that this will move. So when you pull up your lever, then you can move your miter saw to the different angles. So for my first cut on the left side of my piece of lumber, I'm going to go all the way here to this 45-degree angle. Once it's set at 45 degrees, then I'm going to go ahead and screw this back tight so that it doesn't move on me, and then I can make my first cut. A couple of things that I want to point out before I make my first cut: if you feel like you might need some safety goggles, go ahead and grab those. You definitely want to feel safe and protected before you start working with this woodworking machinery. Also, this right here, if you're using lumber that is long like this and you don't want to have to work with your hands, especially since we're at the very corner here, this could be kind of awkward since there's so much weight on the back end. This particular miter saw has this clamp option that comes with it, and it's really nice. I have it clamped down and I don't have to worry about it. So this saw will go back and forth. It is a sliding saw, but I've gone ahead and locked it down so that it won't move on me. And then all I need to do is push down the safety button here, go ahead and pull my trigger, and then make my cut. Make sure that the blade has stopped moving completely. You do have this guard, but make sure that it has stopped moving completely before you come in here and pull off your extra parts. But we've made our first cut, so we can go ahead and unclamp this and make our second cut. So now for my second cut, I'm going to go ahead and loosen this, pull up on this lever, and rotate it to the other 45-degree angle. Once it's there, I can go ahead and tighten that back down, and then we can put our piece of lumber back in here. Okay, now I have this piece of lumber put in here. I'm making the second cut, and I did go ahead and move my clamp so that I don't have to worry about that long piece of lumber flopping over once I've made the cut. And now I'm just, again, going to push my safety button and pull the trigger here and make this cut. So now I have this first piece of wood here, and then you just want to measure the top and make sure that it is the length that you want it. And the cool part is that I already have a 45-degree angle here left over on my piece of lumber. So now I just have to make one here. So I'm going to measure from here to here at 8 inches and make a 45-degree cut this way. Now I have all 4 of these pieces cut, and I don't know, you may have noticed, you may not have noticed, because I had the one cut from left over after this piece was cut, for instance, then I only just had to keep moving down. You would flip your piece of lumber that's on there and then just make this angled cut all the way down. So that was really nice. You don't have to keep moving back and forth. But since I'm finished with that, I'm going to go ahead and cut my piece of MDF board. And finished, this is 8 inches. So I'm going to make it 7.5 inches by 7.5 inches so that I don't have to worry about any overhang. So what I want to do is take this and move it back to the 0 degree. And I'm sure you can't see, but I've marked this at 7.5 inches. So I'll cut this at 7.5 inches, and then I'll cut this at 7.5 inches. Now, I do want to point out, I probably should have done it earlier. When you are making your cuts, you need to take into account that the blade is about 1/16 of an inch in width. And so that will make your cut length a little bit off if you don't put it on the correct side of the line that you've made. So I've made my line, for instance, my 7.5 inch line is right here. And if I don't put the blade on the right side of that line, if I put it on the left side, then it's going to make this 1/16 of an inch short of being 7.5 inches. So think about that when you are making your cuts with the miter saw. So for this particular machine, the way that you engage and disengage the sliding arm is this right here. So I want to disengage it so that I can slide and make this 7.5 inch cut. What I like to do when I'm just getting started is, without putting my hand on the trigger, just by using this handle, I like to pull this down and make sure that my line is on the left side of my blade. Once it is on the left side of my blade, then I can pull it back up so that the guard is back over the blade. And then I can press my safety button and trigger, pull it all the way to the front, click it in, and then I'm going to pull down and slowly push back. Okay, now I've made my second 7.5 inch mark, so I'll place that here as well and do the same thing. I'm just going to lower this and make sure that my blade is on the right side of my mark, and then I'll make the cut. Now I'm finished with this miter saw, so I can clean up and get to putting this frame together. So when you're finished, you should have 4 pieces that go together perfectly like this. If your angles were done well and your measurements from point to point were done properly, it should go together perfectly like that. So now all we need to do is clamp these pieces together. And I'm just going to line them up like this, grab my little clamp here. And you can kind of get it pretty tight and then get it more perfect once you're finished. Okay, so I have this aligned perfectly, and I'm using 2 clamps here. I tend to over clamp, but in my opinion, it's better to over clamp and not have it move at all than not to clamp enough and have it move on you last minute. So I'm going to set this to the side for just a second and grab my nail gun. And I want to install the nails we're going to be using today. And for this particular air nailer, or nail gun rather, all you do to load the nails is push this right here, then pull this out. And then we're gonna grab our nails and put them all the way to the front like this. And then we will just close until we hear that snap. Now, with this nail gun, it does have a safety feature on it. So this right here has to be pushed in order for the gun to work. So you'll push this into your wood, and then you'll be able to use the trigger right here to shoot the nail into the wood. When you're shooting in, make sure that you're doing it straight. You don't want it to come out the sides or any spots where it's not supposed to come out. So just make sure that it's really good and straight. Okay, now I can remove the clamp from this side, and I can clamp this piece together. Okay, now that I have this clamped, I'm gonna use my nail gun to go ahead and shoot another nail in, and then I'll clamp the other pieces on and shoot nails into them as well. So I just went and shot one nail in each of these corners, and what I probably would want to do is just go back and shoot another one so that it's good and sturdy. But you won't need a clamp for that, so you can just go in with your nail gun and shoot those other ones in. Okay, now that we put those extra nails in there, this is a good sturdy frame, and we are ready to put on the back here. What I want to do is just change out my nails for the 3/4 inch nails so that these don't go all the way through my lumber. You can see these are quite a bit shorter, which will be perfect. It'll go right through that MDF board and a little bit into the lumber. Now, if you were going to paint this, you may want to go ahead and do that just so that it's easier, and then you can apply it once it's painted. However, what I'm going to be using this for is just having the MDF backing. I think the natural look looks pretty cool, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on here. So I've just centered this up, and I just want to make sure that when I'm shooting the nails in that I'm not going too far in, or else it will come through the back and you'll see it in the middle of the picture. You also want to be mindful when you're cutting your back so that you, for instance, the inside of this right here is 5 inches, and I wouldn't want to make it 4.5 inches because I want to cover that opening. I wouldn't want to make it even 5 1/8 because I wouldn't want this tiny bit, the 1/16 of an inch overhang on either side, and then I would have to try to hit that into my frame from the back, and it would just be a whole thing. So consider all of that when you are cutting your backing piece. So we're going to even it up here. Grab our nail gun and put in several nails. Okay, so there's our finished frame. It looks really nice. And if you're going to be using a lot of these frames, then I, for one, like to make a bunch of them all at one time. Don't put the backing on them, just make the frames. And then we have in the past worked with a pegboard wall where we hung these in different sizes and could just grab them. It was really nice. So if you use a lot of them, then that's a fantastic option. But it is finished. I hope you enjoyed learning how to make this mitered picture frame. I hope that it is very beneficial for you to know how to do now, that you are very profitable from it, and that you have lots of fun making these frames. If you enjoyed this video, you'll love Oak and Lamb. We do lots of things here, everything from Cricut crafting to glow forge projects to woodworking, sewing, quilting, home decor, sublimation, and more. We do it all here, and we love to teach you how to do it. Our community of crafters here at Oak and Lamb is unrivaled. We have the best, and you would love to be a part. So click the link below, oakandlamb.com, find out what we are about, and feel free to shoot us an email if you have any questions about what we offer and what we do here at Oak and Lamb. If you are not a subscriber here to the channel, go ahead and hit subscribe and turn on notifications so that you know when we are live and when we launch new content for you all. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you here on another day.